And here I want to open the floor for questions. Most of what you said was very positive, and this is already in place in many of the government institutions. There was a suggestion, I think, a few months ago, stipulating that if you want to register online, you need to give the employee the authorities of a minister. In my own point of view, this is not positive because the ministries and the different sectors work on isolated islands, let alone working among different ministers. We need the powers and authorities of a president in order to effect the change in what we call the one window system or the one stop window. You talked about the sustainability, but what about the exit strategy? What if you are an investor and you want to deal with the electricity company or the Ministry of Defense to get a certain plot of land? And then if the Ministry of Defense said this land is ours, then everything is done or is over. Now you want to get the powers and authorities of a president and delegate these powers to employees and officials.
Actually, I have questions for you, Engineer Mustafa. That's the general formatting of the procedures of incorporation. It was very tricky and very smart, so that you at the end you did not change the procedure, but you brought all the entities that implement the procedures and put offices or desks. So I did not go deep into all of these. The second question is that if we you have talked about Egyptians, but I want to talk about foreigners and also the security related review of foreigners. What did you do to it? Because I know it takes time and ample time. The third question is the governance, because you are a governance person. Have you put a group of KPIs which is away from the 11 days, away from those 11 days from the Egyptians? I don't want to say for foreigners because it takes much longer time. What are the KPIs for them? Also for Engineer Mustafa, you have mentioned that there is a group of accredited agents. Are they in the GAFI's website in order to reach them easily? Also, as far as foreigners are concerned, uh, I mean, after the incorporation, we have cases in the markets, a lot of cases that sometimes there is fraud on the part of foreigners. So is it for the Egyptians who were subject to this kind of fraud by foreigners? So is there a follow-up for the foreigners who made partnership with Egyptians and they left they left and then they will come back to do some kind of fraud again? So there are many cases in the market. We need to know how can we follow it up, or how can we link between the Ministry of Interior represented in the immigration department or passport control department, just like what happens to any other country. If any foreigner who has indebtedness or a complaint, they have to stop it at the immigration or the passport control. And also for Mr. Adli, did you do any introduction about the company and its activity, or how can we access such a company? For Engineer Mustafa, my name is Adeliz. I'm communication engineer. I just need to comment on a certain case study about Egypt, about Bank Misr. When we did automation for the bank, we were talking with Muhammad Hafiz, who is the director of the bank or the chairman of the bank, and there was a foreign partner who was doing the project. He is a British. So we did a project management, like we did a chart, our network, a phase to be given to a certain phase, and then a phase to be given to a certain phase. So the whole team, like us, who were above 50, do not believe in computers and digital. So the guy used to tell me, this 0 and 1, I don't like it. I have Bank Misr that has 150,000 clients, and then you have to transfer 0 to 1 and 1 to 0. And then when we introduce the automation, maybe a long time ago, when you have a check, and then cashing a check would take 30 minutes to 40 minutes, because you should take a certain coin and then wait for the queue, and then you have to go to the treasurer, because he is the only one who has the money. So one of the discussions, we said that we have to take this money to the tellers. So the employee said, no, no, that we will lose the bank's money. So the idea of those people who got used to paperwork to introduce electronic formatting, you are also lucky, because you are in the computer age. In the 80s, there was no PCs. It was just a dumb terminal and a mainframe. So even the terminal didn't have the ability to do the processing. So I think if there is a software person who can do all of this process that you have talked about, can make a process to deliver to another process, just like the one-stop shop that you have mentioned, and that all this paperwork will go inside the institution on its own. I guess you have talked about it, and then the money couldn't be paid from the money. When I was in Saudi Arabia, a big man came to me, and he is and who is the owner of Mercedes agency. He told me that I need to transfer a certain big amount of money to Mercedes. So I gave him some equipment, and that he was able to transfer this huge amount of money, millions of marks, to Germany. This online for transfer, it was in the 80s. Hopefully we can reach this phase that was in Saudi Arabia 20 years ago. Part of the challenges, I hope, for foreigners, we have to go on or pursue its work, because after we incorporate a company, a foreigner will take the commercial registration and tax card and attend the General Assembly, and then put the money, and then if he did not get a security clearance, then there will be a problem, because in the 80s we used to get the security clearance first, and then afterwards we can take the procedures of the commercial registration and tax card and incorporation of the company. Now the system is reversed. So I don't want to say that not to go back, but we have to face it. So so we are trying, because after they take all the procedures and operate the company, and then they start the company, there will be no security clearance. Yeah, because sometimes the security clearance would have many question marks. For doing business as regards bankruptcy, have you mentioned it? For exits, it's an issue, because I have a lot of companies, and I cannot close them or terminate these companies. And then I find that the companies come back to me, the taxation come back to me after 15 years, and then the companies are still existing, and I don't know what to do with them. Are there any other comments? I had a question for Engineer Mustafa. So are these improvements in merging or consolidating procedures, are there in the governorates, or they are only exist in Cairo here, in the capital? So I will first answer the points directed, because there's a lot of complexity in the system. Some systems have already, some points have already been resolved, and the types of companies are different. So not all the companies would need this bank certificate, for example, and not all the companies need registration at the MCDR. So the problem of the service providers is that we in the investment uh, authority, we have rules because each entity would have a law behind it. Uh, if you have visited us at any time, you will find that the amount of work that we are trying to do and to convince the entities, like trying to negotiate with each entity to tell them, because we are a representative of the investor, so we are trying to lobby for the objectives that you have mentioned. And the more you mention some points and we know about them, we take it into consideration as an additional lobbying power. There are some procedures which are very normal, and it is internationally. So if you just assign someone to do a company for you, there should be a power of attorney. So I cannot say that just this person would go and incorporate a company on behalf of you without you knowing this. And also dealing with the real estate publicity is not ideal, but this is something that we need to talk about. There are alternative scenarios, but this needs a certificate, like like a signature authorization or signature validation certificate. We have to take it from a bank. So sometimes we face all of this. So we have internal problems that that pump into this system. So is this streamlined, and can I apply it on the ground? No, sometimes I cannot promise you, because it's related to some legislations. There are things are related to the protecting the rights of certain persons. If you say that you should have an auditor to audit the accounts, so the regulator has looked at it, it's for protection, it's not for handicapping or for putting obstacles, because of those persons. Before, after they establish a company, they will go into some disagreements. And also this reserve name issue, or non-confusion of name. So we were able to deal with it, and the model is there. You can just go ahead and test it, and I'm sure that you'll find the feedback is very good. And also the issue of the syndicate of lawyers, this is another procedure that the whole government is trying to deal with it. And also for the online and the part related to payment, the service of the payment stayed like for 2 weeks with a certain issue of the provider of the gateway, and I think, or I believe, it has been resolved. And you can test it again, and I'm sure it will accept your credit card. Also recovery of money, but it happens, but it's a bit slow, because the money, it's not an easy, because there are many things, there's a story behind it. One of Because they're talking about online payment. So in Gafi, yes, all your papers will be reviewed, and then we will assess the fees, because you on the workspace you'll get a feedback from the lawyer that the fees are so and so, and then you get the payment receipt that has all the payments required, and then the process will go on. So as long as you did a payment, so it will be relying on the content that you have. So we'll do something what's called a consulting service, that you can submit all the content, and then for it has to be, and then checks will be made that it's final. Again, it's the basic fee, because when you go through the implementation, things will be very satisfying for you. The Facebook page, I'm quite sure that it's working, because we're posting a lot of things on it, but it's simple, it's not a problem. And also for the tax card of the sole proprietorship, I agree. I have a problem with it before the session, that the second number, other than the tax registration number, which is the tax file number, luckily we delved into the deep details. It comes out from books or registers that are available in the tax district office, that are available everywhere in the governorates. So it's not an excuse. We are a government. Others are issued from the corporation tax district office, but for the individual ones, they have certain symbols inside their minds, and we're trying to resolve them. But but luckily, there is a decree that was issued just to cancel the tax file number, which is only to acknowledge the tax identification number. And then now this tax file number has phased out, and we are trying to make use of this decree so that we can issue this tax card without getting the file number. And then another part related to the tin, that it's related to a certain district office. So sometimes our employee does not know that this person in Minya will be part of Malawi district or Samalut district. So he doesn't know which village is part of it. So now we are working with the tax administration to say that we will do a table that has all those districts and all those governorates, so that based on this basic data they will know what part of district office. So the idea is to get it streamlined for everyone, because we have the limited liability and one person company. It's ideal, so that for the corporation, for the shareholding, so there should be also the reserve certificate, and then also the MCDR. There are many things. So the process is there in some cases, but it's not in all the cases. The problem is that they are sometimes related to things that we don't have in hand, and we cannot do it quickly, but we are going into this direction. And then after incorporation, we started, there is a team working a long time ago on these systems, and we are trying to activate it so that it will be utilized in full. There is a process of submission of associations data, and then after this we have to regulate the process and streamline it so that you're not dependent on individuals. So this is step 2 of the effort that's being currently taken, and we are working on it. And maybe Mr. Mohsen, the chairman, he's taking these things very earnestly and seriously, because he is specialized in this field and he knows very well how to work on it. The other issue of the Chamber of Commerce and the Associations Chamber, I think there are 2 scenarios. Shall we bring them and put them, or remove them? Or remove a procedure, or cancel a certain procedure? If they have money, okay, we can find a solution for it. It happened with more than one entity already. So to nullify this step in a way or another, some entities we were able to say that, okay, we will do not do it this way. Some entities say that we have to adjust their procedures with their own agreement, like in the tax department, in the VAT, and then insurance. A radical change in the way that they have been doing, and we have implemented the procedures on the ground. But this happens. But is this the maximum thing that we can do? No, we can still do a lot of things. We can bypass all of this and then have a unified registration number, and everyone will have their own procedures and they do their own workflows on their own. This opens the door in the answer to some of the questions in the one-stop shop employee and in their authorities. Like, as you said, the authorities of a minister or president, this is something very big. Yes, there is a way to make use of the incorporation lawyer, whom you can consider him, if you are thinking flexibly, that he could be an authorizer to do like the real estate publicity department work, and then he can collect the money. He can just we can issue decision, and then he will give an oath in front of the Minister of Justice. This is what we are trying. Maybe this is wishful thinking, but it's doable in 2 days if we can do it. So it's a political decision. So the idea is very, it's very viable and very valid, and if there is a political support for it, it can go on. The other form of the procedures, as Mr. Khalid said, yes, there are some procedures that have been internally reformed. I will not say that it's a major reform, but canceling the inspection is good, but it's a change of mindset. And some procedures we used it that it's like a box, because we cannot do it on our own, because when we go to a certain ministry or the real estate publicity department to tell them that you have to change this because it doesn't cope with what we are talking about, though they have taken some procedures, because before that they didn't acknowledge electronic signatures. They said, because he said he has to come and he has a token so that we have electronic, because I have to identify to ensure his identity and his eligibility as well. So we did a procedure that we have invented together with an initiative from them, from the Real Estate Publicity Department Commissioner. He said that I will do what's called an identification form. He will come to me once only that he is there and he is eligible, and then once we do this form, that we can do the electronic signature indefinitely. So we solved it, and now the process is going on. Sometimes it gets blocked in some cases, because in the issue we are trying to push forward the proper business environment, and we are trying to solve it. We will not say that we do things and do things, but there is a pain that in some cases sometimes they ask for the original power of attorney. So now the digital process is no longer valid, or it's no longer there. So in the original power of attorney, sometimes the real estate publicity, they have 300 point of providing service. 110 of them are automated, others are manual. So for the manual ones, they have nothing unless they know they have certain ways to verify the validity of the power of attorney. So they need to see the original. From their point of view, they need to see it. From my point of view, they don't have to see it. So in the electronic part, they have centralized database that's done by the Ministry of Communication, that has the originals of such powers of attorney that they can connect to on and then verify it. So they have tried to do the system digital and tell them that you have to bring a manual power of attorney, and then I will not be able to verify it. So maybe this is some of the things that I wanted to mention. Also for the exit, it is related, because historically the exit was complicated. The process of companies, because they were dismantled, because you will go here and go here, and there is no unique ID that can link things, and there is no unique streamlined process that's agreed upon. So in order to roll it back in the exit, it's very complicated, especially that each entity in the case of exit wants to verify that there are no dues or liabilities for them. And in the meantime, the liabilities that the employee will have to sign, that this company has no liability. So, and this procedure needed its own workflow, which is cross-ministerial. It has, because the investment is loping on a very advanced processes. Because I'm not free to do it, I don't have a free hand to do it. But the idea is there is integration between more than one entity, and then the entities that are working with us, we have to think the same way in order to do the competition. Maybe at the level of ministers, it's good, but when you go down to the level of the employee who is in charge of this file, you will find things will not go the way we want. As for security procedures, there is a homework that we are working on, but we still cannot promise anything, because the authority is not on our hand to say what's happening or what will not happen, because we are trying to put a lot of alternatives as much as we can, but we are not authorized yet to say what action to be taken. After the incorporation and the procedures, if there is any fraud, I guess the ecosystem of doing business has because this applies on another indicator which called the contract enforcement, because there should be a streamlined system in the judicial system to serve on this, and I'm not throwing it away or giving it on the shoulder of something else. So I am trying to consider myself flexible. So there are some points that are required to have the resolution of such a case. Maybe I have covered everything. Thank you very much.
Mr. Adli, since you are working in Africa and on Africa, how is the company registration process is in Africa? Is it that complicated or much easier than us? I'm sorry, now the panelists are not using the microphone. I will set two examples here, and maybe three examples. We can all hear about the technological revolution in Rwanda after the civil war. And today, if you sit with anyone from the UN, the WB, any other international organization, they will always cite the example of Rwanda, and in the African forum that used to be held in Switzerland. This year it's held in Rwanda and it's running at this very moment. How do you register a company in Rwanda or register a project? First of all, if you want to start a business in Rwanda, you want to have a certificate of registration of incorporation. And you want to have an identification tax number. That's it. That's it. You need to have a copy of your ID or passport, and then you fill in an application or a form. You can do so online. If you want to open a branch for a foreign company in Rwanda, you need to pay $6. And there is just like a declaration or an announcement. If you want to do so in Egypt, you will suffer a lot. I don't want to burden you with all the complaints, but it's really hard to do so. If you already have a registered company abroad, but you want to open a branch in Egypt, you will suffer. Yes, it's a very hard process. I'm sorry, they're not using the microphone. You cannot hear that in the translation room. South Africa has a long track record in this. First, you register the company. Second, you need to go to the revenues and the tax office, and then you go to the Ministry of Council, or what we call the county council, equivalent to the municipality. So this is the process you have to follow in South Africa to start a business, and they have a very interesting thing called the payee. Pay, Paye, payee. What does that mean? Pay as you earn. So you pay the tax when you make money. Why do you have to delay everything before even starting? You need to work for 6 months or 1 year before you have a revenue. So this is very, very interesting, and it's very, very logical. Pay as you earn. So pay your taxes when you earn, but you don't have to stop the registration process to settle things with the tax authority before even working. Yeah, they pay certain fees, but of course not 60,000 or 100,000 Egyptian pounds. We need to review and reconsider these amounts. I'm sorry, Dr. Abla is not using a microphone. In Rwanda, the registration fees is very simple, limited, and fixed. It's not discretionary. Um, Here we discussed the electronic visa. When I went to Kenya, I asked what do I do, and they advised me to apply online on the embassy of Kenya. You submit all the documents, your passport, and then one day later you get your visa issued and sent to your email. They do it online, including all the security procedures. I'm not sure. That was done in 1 or 2 days maximum, and it was sent to my email. So things have progressed, and of course, I need to praise the efforts done by the Mayik, because before this one-stop window or one-stop shop, we would have said 4 months, but now it's 1 month. What is the secret to Rwanda's development? They killed men. They killed men. Genocide, especially for men. So now it's a female dominated society. This is the hidden secret of success and development. I really want to thank Engineer Mustafa Ghali and Sir Adli Toma for an excellent session. So, because we are lagging behind in time, we need to have a break of 15 minutes, and we have Ms. Maya Abdelhamid to organize this. So, please come on time to start the second session. Thank you so much.